For someone whose entire career has been focused on joy, why a podcast on pain? Because these stories need to be told. A good phoenix rising out of the ashes story reminds us all that not only can we survive, we can thrive. And when we emerge, we're different. That's the alchemy of pain. Welcome to another edition of The Alchemy of Pain. This podcast interviews people that have been through some difficult things, and it shares the story of what they learned, how they grew, how they coped, who they became as a result. And boy, if you've been following this series, we've run the gamut. Grief takes on many different forms, and it doesn't have to be just because someone died. Loss leads to grief. And I was captivated by my guest and her area of expertise because I bet almost everyone in this audience has experienced the heartbreak of being laid off. It's not something that's talked about often, but this is her lane now. And because of personal experience, I'm so honored to introduce you to author, and she's also a community host and founder, Laura Krauss. Laura, great to have you here.
Thank you, Brenda. I'm so excited to be here. I really appreciate the opportunity to share my story today with your audience.
So I often start with the question, how do you serve in the world today? And I think my intro sort of cued that up, but go for it.
Yeah, so after 25 years in a professional sales role, I found myself on the other end of a blindsiding, politically motivated and targeted layoff last November 2023. And it shocked my world. It made me rethink about everything related as to who I was, the things that I had accomplished, the things that I had achieved, and really where was I going to go from here. So I was able to take my 25 years of being in sales and help other people through their transition from their layoff. When you think about it, sales is all about helping people at the end of the day. And so now I'm just taking my decades of experience and helping people in a very different way, by helping them through the emotional grief and trauma that a layoff can bring.
And you had to work through your own. I always say I have to live it to give it. So you had to work through all of that, which it's not just the loss of a job. I mean, when you're a really good, top tier, award winning employee, and all of a sudden the rug's pulled out from under you like that, it makes you question anything, everything. Like, if that can be this uncertain, and uncertainty is the fuel for fear in all of our lives. So, walk us through the blindsiding, if you don't mind going back there.
Yeah, sure. So I think I'm like a lot of people. I valued myself with my career and my profession, and that's not to say that that takes away from being a mother and a wife and daughter and a sister. But my really sense of who I was and what I was able to give back to this world came out through my career. I'd always been a top professional throughout my career, whether I started out in sales operations for the first half of my career. I was a franchise owner for a number of years before I really started getting involved in software sales. And so for the last 10 years, I worked for three different companies, hit my annual quota in 9 months' time at all three, got the top marks that you would get on your performance reviews, mentored and trained others, paid it forward in many different ways. So getting laid off was something that was extremely the farthest thing from my mind. I never even anticipated that it was be part of any part of my story. And when it happened last November, literally right before the holidays, probably the third or fourth round of layoffs that my company experienced, like I said, it shattered me to my core and it made me second guess everything that I knew about myself. I always say that my job and my career was as much a part of my identity as my big brown eyes. I couldn't separate the two. And so for me, it sent me into this huge tailspin of really trying to reassess, okay, who is Laura Krauss? What legacy do I want to leave behind in this world? Clearly, my role is gone here at this company, but I have so much more to offer. How can I take those skills and now transfer them in a new way to help people and really leave a personal and professional legacy behind that I'm proud of?
And I'm so excited to dig more into that and how people can work with you to get help over this very difficult hump. But your story transported me back to age 24. I had beat out 10,000 people to be one of QVC's first show hosts.
Wow.
I thought this was my big break, never anticipating that it would be my big heartbreak, because 3 months after I was hired, without any training, they said, Brenda, we don't care about sales. You know, you have a news background, you're a great presenter, just be you and everything will fall into place. Well, 3 months later, they hired someone to come in, cut my hair off, put me on a diet, change my wardrobe. And then I was brought into an office and unceremoniously told, you're gone. And I think I had a couple weeks of severance because it was
Yeah.
only a 3 month job. But to me, I changed my entire life. I left a news career. I was all in and I was fully unequipped to fail, because I thought if I tried hard and did my best, that people would be on my side and I'd have this career. And I ended up waiting on tables because careers in TV aren't easy to come by. That moment when you found out, was it in a group setting or was it one on one? Paint the picture for us.
Yeah, I like to say it was just a regular old Wednesday because it was. It was the week after Thanksgiving. I just come back from visiting my sister in Canada. I was getting back into the grind of the work week. I wasn't traveling that week for work, so I was home. I had a full day of meetings booked on my calendar, like I did every day. And I was actually on a call with another colleague, just a regular one-on-one, just catching up. And at 9:15 a.m., I received an email that said, your role is impacted. 4 words that changed my life really forever. I immediately told my colleague I had an emergency I needed to take care of. I excused myself and I saw that I had a calendar invite for an hour and a half later with my SVP of sales, the same one who had hired me 4 years prior. There was nobody on HR. When I logged into the call at 10:45, my SVP of sales didn't even turn on his camera. I asked him to please look me in the eye to do this. This is somebody that I worked with for 4 years and lined his pockets with millions of dollars of software sales, was one of his top performers and leaders, someone he actually tapped on the shoulder and said, hey, we want you to lead this team. And he said, no, my camera's not working today. I'm sorry. And he laughed. And I said, oh, how convenient for you. And in less than 4 minutes, my entire 4 year tenure at that company was gone. And it's very interesting, Brenda, because 15 minutes later, when he jumped on a call to tell my team that I was no longer there, his camera was working just fine.
So I hear a similar sound, which I recall vividly, which is bitterness.
100%.
When I was called into my office for my unceremonious, uh, I also asked, would you please look me in the eye? And I didn't get it. And that soulless sort of disconnected hatchet job. And then you stew on it. It's like these people didn't even care about me. And so bitterness is not a healthy place to stay.
Yes.
How did you work through that?
Yeah. So I recognize that that chain of events said more about his character than it did about mine. And my book, The Layoff Cooties, It's Them, Not You, weaves my layoff story and the events that transpired just weeks before, which again detail why I believe this was politically motivated, because I was very outspoken about pay inequity issues within my organization. And I think the final nail in my coffin was that I went above my SVP of sales head to get answers on headcount for my team. And there's a lot of other details there, but long story short, I recognized that my layoff story was really walking through the stages of grief. And so in my book, I actually share my layoff story through those 7 stages of grief. And my message to anyone else who has ever been through this before is that whether you know it or not, you're actually going to encounter those exact same stages throughout your process.
I'd love to
And
talk about those stages. I'm sorry, I didn't
yeah,
mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
yeah, no, absolutely. And let's talk about what those stages are for people that don't know what they are. Normally, it's correlated to a death of a person, and I very much believe that this experience has the exact same emotions. And I'm certainly not saying the death of a person and the death of a layoff is comparable, but related to the emotions of grief, it absolutely is.
I find it lovely that your layoff happened in the month of November and
Yeah.
your book comes out in the month of November. It's like such a triumph and a full circle thing. And I just want to underscore that this book is available. It is called The Layoff Cooties. It's them, not you, which I want to get into why you titled it that way as well. But let's go back
Yes.
to those stages of grief. So often related to the loss of a person or a death, but this is the loss of an identity and a career.
Yes, very much so. You lose a lot more than a paycheck when you lose your job. You lose a piece of yourself. There's a lack of self confidence. There's a lack of, or I should say, an increase in imposter syndrome. You lose a lot of who you thought you were in that process. And that happens to even some of the most confident of people. And I counted myself in that category 100%. But the stages of grief are shock, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, testing, and acceptance. And I would say to my audience out there that acceptance just means that yes, this happened to me, and I'm going to be okay. It doesn't mean that you're fixed. It doesn't mean that your grief is ever over. It just means an acknowledgement that this happened and that you're going to be okay.
So, this word cooties, I recall when I was dumped, all of a sudden, all the people that we would go to happy hour and have dinner or lunch together, it was as if I had the plague. If layoff fever was something you could catch by
Yes.
association, did you experience that?
Yes, it's the first thing that I experienced, and I actually had the name of the book within a week of my layoff, and I knew that this was something that I had to speak about because my book is really focused on the emotional grief and the emotional trauma that a layoff creates, right? People have long documented the financial aspects of it, right? You obviously need to get a new job and support your family, but I don't think people really give themselves the opportunity to truly understand how much of an emotional impact it has on your life. I've always said I hated that mantra of don't take it personally, it's just business. Everything about a layoff is personal. It impacts every single aspect of your life. So it's very difficult to not take it personally. And in my case, I was, I would say, a very decorated employee, had a lot of great relationships, both internally and externally. And for me, the relationships disappeared within a week. Um, I lost relationships with women that I mentored for years. My former team was told to no longer communicate with me, otherwise their job would be in jeopardy. The whole corporate narrative just changes after you've been laid off. And what I found is that I started writing on LinkedIn about my layoff shortly after it happened, and I found this tribe of people over the last year who I've met with literally hundreds of folks who have been laid off, and 99% of them talk about this cooties phenomenon of literally being forgotten very quickly after their layoff. And it's just a topic that nobody discusses. And I'm just trying to open the conversation around that.
I also have to say that it really speaks to your character that what started this domino effect was you speaking up. And even after you were let go, you didn't shut up. Where did that bravery come from?
I think it speaks to just who I am. I'm authentically vulnerable. What you see is what you get. I had never posted on LinkedIn prior to my layoff, but I was in such dire need of connection, Brenda, that for me, speaking and writing about it publicly confirmed all the feelings and emotions that I was going through. So I recognize vulnerability is very personal from one person to the next, and not everybody is going to get out there and wear their emotions on a sleeve. But I like to say that I am always someone who listens with my eyes. And I've considered myself a very empathetic leader, an authentic leader. And I was just trying to lead myself out of this situation. And the best way for me to do that was through my writing and sharing how I was feeling.
Do you think that people, when they're entering into a professional agreement, a working relationship, can have a spidey sense or scope out a culture to kind of prevent this from happening? Or is it just a fact of life in corporate America? I mean, I've heard of CEOs who said, look, I'll be your biggest champion until the day I fire you. And is that just the way corporate America is?
I'd hate to believe that that's just how corporate America is. After 25 years, I can tell you that this experience changed me to the point that I know I don't want to ever go back. And so I very quickly put my LLC together. I offer sales coaching now, and I really mentor and help other people throughout this layoff experience. And for me, that's where I feel like this kind of second phase of my professional career is taking me. I have a very, very strong faith, and I believe that God is telling me, Laura, your platform at your former company was far too small, and I am now preparing you for a much larger platform for you to help people in ways you never even imagined. And Brenda, that's what keeps me going day in and day out. Because look, we can't prevent everyone from not working in corporate America, but I do think that we can allow people to bring their authentic selves to work each and every day. And I don't want people to feel like they can't do that.
Mm. What you just said is so powerful and is really the reason why we do this podcast, because pain often leads to purpose. And we go through the valley of the shadow of death. We don't build an altar there, set up a condo, pitch a tent.
Yes.
We got to go through it. But once you're through it, you come out the other side just like the butterfly in the chrysalis, different, changed, and with a renewed sense of purpose. And clearly, that's what's happened with you. So, aside from your book, you also you have these online groups. Tell me how that works.
Yes. So, what I found when I was doing my sales coaching was I love the one on one training and mentoring, and that filled a certain need or a certain part of my cup. But I missed the community aspect. And I was enjoying the conversations I was having with people who were sharing their layoff experiences. And I was finding that I was connecting people with one another who had been laid off. Oh, Mary just told me about that exact same scenario. You need to talk to Bob, right? And so I thought I need to create this online community that is free and gives people access to share their stories, because there's so much healing power in being able to just get the words out and sharing how we feel. And getting laid off can be extremely isolating. And so for me, creating this online platform, it's called the Layoff Cooties Couch. So similar in name to my book. And we have about 100 members or so. It started in late August. And we have online resources. So we have coaching corners each week where I bring in guest coaches and counselors to talk about different topics that are important within the community. We have writing prompts so people can share their layoff stories and other people can read them, and lots of other resources as well. So um, I'm just really, really proud of how that's all kind of come together organically. And I think I just started creating resources that I wish I had when I was going through the experience. And so they say if you don't have it, to create it. And so that's what I went and did.
And what I also have to remark about is the fact that you are offering this free to people. I mean, when I got laid off, the first thing was like, how am I going to pay the rent? And I went and waited on tables, and this was back in my 20s, right? So
Yeah.
And then I did have another painful layoff in my early 40s, and then another painful career change in my late 50s, creating the life I now live, doing what I love to do. And every step along the way prepared me for all that I do today. And people said to me, Brenda, you're doing a podcast and you don't have sponsors, you don't get paid for this. But the joy it gives me to share
Yes.
stories and uplift people and to make sense of the pain in life. That's what it's all about for me. And I have found if I follow the prompting, and I am also a believer that if I'm being in alignment with the divine, that everything else falls into place. The bills end up getting paid.
Yes. I believe that wholeheartedly. And I look, I mean, everybody needs to earn a living, but um, doing it through a paid community wasn't for me. My time will come. I'm I'm sure of it. For me, it was all about access, and I wanted to make sure that there were no barriers for people to participate.
So people can find you by visiting your website. Please remind us.
Yes, my website is rippleeffectsales.com. And I'm also very active on LinkedIn. It's the only social platform that I am on. And I love interacting with my community there. So I love to connect with people.
And I've noticed you get a lot of engagement. Sometimes I post things and it's like crickets. Was anybody, hello, is anybody out there? But you get a lot of people that engage. And I think in part, and I'm not disparaging my own content, but you are speaking truths that very few people are talking about.
Yes.
I appreciate
Yes, and I believe that that is part of how my tribe came to be. They have been listening to my story since last year, and I've taken them on this entire journey with me. So I'm really excited for them to read the book and to really understand the full picture outside of what I've just been posting here and there.
Well, I had to celebrate your work because it so speaks to my heart. And I wish that something like this had existed through my painful layoffs throughout my career. So as we close, someone just got that phone call or that email or that Zoom call, and they've been told they've been eliminated. What would you say to them?
I would say to them, your layoff does not define you. Give yourself some grace and surround yourself with people who have gone through it. There's support out there if you need it. You just need to have to ask.
Well, I am really glad that you are serving in the world the way you do today. And I agree that the previous incarnation of your professional life was far too small. And so you're
Thank you.
enlarging the place of your tent and you're going to help many people. And I can see, even as you're smiling, the fulfillment that you get from doing it. And isn't that just the icing on the cake?
Amen.
Amen. Thank you for being here today, Laura. And for those of you who have tuned in or you're listening, keep going. Yeah, this might be a dark time or a difficult spot, and I'm not minimizing that at all. Feel all the feelings, but you're in the middle of a transformation, and something wonderful is going to emerge from that chrysalis if you just keep pressing. Thanks for tuning in and have a great day.